Hello, learners. I am going to speak about migration, that too of the post-independence migration. As we all know that the history of migration is very, very long because we have heard India has had a very strong relations with each and every country of the world, and migration has been taking place since time immemorial. So already there is a talk that has been done by some of the scholars about pre-independence era. So I am going to talk about post-colonial era. What kind of migration? What are the trends and the patterns of Indian migration which has been taking place yeah, from India to the different parts of the world, especially to the developed nations. So I'm going to focus on that. So as we all know that migration from India to other countries, and that too of the migration of skilled and semi-skilled laborers from post-colonial India, indentured labor during colonial and slavery under mercantilism have all contributed to the development of Indian diaspora groups which are found around the world. And if you see the total size of the diaspora, Indian diaspora, I think it is estimated to around 33 million. But here it is very important to discuss about all this because what is the how diaspora has been formed. So it is nothing but the migration which has led to the formation of Indian diaspora. And if you see, because five patterns are there under which diaspora is formed, and the two stages, I think patterns which are very very important, to which I am going to focus, and that too of the pre-independence era. So the first one is I think these two stages could be distinguished in the post-colonial Indian international migration. These are the two processes. The first phase that involves highly skilled workers migrating to developed Western nations such as UK, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, States, etc. Following the oil boom, which took place in the Gulf countries, the second phase was the migration of unskilled and semi-skilled laborers, mostly from southern Indian states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh. But now, if you see the scenario today, I think migration has started taking place from northern part of India, that is Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan. So these are the states or the province from where migration has started taking place. In fact, now it is dominated by the northern Indian states. So that is very, very important. So here we are going to focus about the migration, especially to UK, USA, United States of America and Canada. So according to one of the scholar, I think he has made a special study. So what basically he has talked about, the early stage of migration from India to the United Kingdom was based on colonial linkage with post-colonial India just after independence. While migration from India to the United States was started by US immigration policy that took place in 1965 and liberal immigration policy of Canada. So here it is also very important to discuss, that is Indian migration to Australia and New Zealand, which also, they also come under the purview of the developed nation. So we see that due to Australia's 1901 Immigration Restriction Act, which in fact limited the entry of the non-white people, I think migration from India to Australia was not very significant in the earlier time. It was a tiny percentage of Indians moved to Australia from imperial India or the colonial India. So there were few camel riding Afghans, Sikhs, Rajasthani, who immigrated to Australia and utilized camels to carry products in the country's desert regions. Following India's independence, skilled and professional workers moved permanently to Australia for work-related reasons. That is followed by semi-skilled labor who moved temporarily. That started in 1991 and worked primarily in agricultural farm and secondary sector. So here, I think it is very important to understand what are the patterns under which migration has been taking place, especially from India to different parts of the world. So we will very able to understand this phenomena under five patterns. First one is indentured labor migration, and the second one is called Kangani and Mastri labor migration, or free or passage migration, and of course voluntary migration to the developed nations, and the last but not the least one is the labor migration to West Asia. So I have got to know that these three patterns have already been discussed by one of the scholars. So I am going to focus on the post independence India. These are the two patterns on which I am going to focus. That is voluntary migration to developed nations, which is also called as economic migration, and of course labor migration. So here it is very important to understand that under the purview of voluntary migration, although the history of Indian immigrant goes back to the early years of the 20th century in North America and 19th century in Britain, but the large scale of Indian immigration to the advanced industrial societies of Europe and North America, in fact, began in the late 50s and 60s. We know pretty well. So the salient features of this type of migration are totally voluntary in nature, and the migration of highly educated professionals, skilled or semi-skilled industrial workers, and the IT professionals today are moving to this region or to these countries. So we all know the Indian migrants who went to settle down in Britain or America were basically in the early time, the Sikhs. So now if we see more and more other Indians are migrating, but still, if you see the scenario, still Sikh community still constitute the largest ethnic community in Britain, Canada, and the US. In the US, the majority of Indians are educated professionals, scientists, engineers, doctors, and the teachers. And this kind of trend has been still continue. Since 1990s, we are seeing that, of course, previously who went there, they have settled down. But on account of the immigration policies, enacted and initiated by the United States of America and other developed countries, I think not much scope is there, but still the people are going. But on the temporary basis, in the sense that not easy to get the, I think, citizenship in that country. And if you see the scenario, what kind of purchase is there, especially that is very important to discuss with you, that in the Silicon Valley, if you see, there would be about one third of the engineers are of the Indian origin or the Indian descent. So they are dominating in almost every sector of the economy in that. So far as the case of Britain and Canada is concerned, Indian communities are occupationally more diversified and relatively less well off. So if we make the comparison between the Indians who are in the United States of America and then Canada, I think in the United States of America, they are richer and they are well off, they are highly educated, and they are holding very key positions in different positions or the occupations. And if you see the total number, roughly speaking, at present, there are about 5 million of the Indian origin in Europe, North America, and Oceania. So that is very, very important to discuss. So what is the stock of Indian migrants in the developed world or the developed countries? So if you see these countries like United States of America, United Kingdom and Canada, I think again there are total 3.7 million Indian migrants in that very region. And I think this is very, very self-explanatory. So if you see the total size of the Indians, I think the stock of Indians or the Indian communities are estimated to around 16.5 million global stocks of the Indian migrants. And if you see the total right now, I think that has gone up to 18 million. And here percentage has been given. So in case of United Kingdom, 5%, and the United States of America, I think 14%, 1/4. In Canada, 3.6%, Australia and New Zealand, 2.8%. And if you see the total subtotal of the Indian migrants, especially in the first world or in the developed nation, it is estimated to be 25.4%, almost 1/4 of the total population. Immigrants populations are over there. But definitely, if you see, 3/4 of the migrants are basically in the developing countries, which is also known by the third world countries or the developing countries. So this is very interesting to discuss this phenomena, and this is the data. Basically, I think source has been given 2019. I think it is based on that data. So again, I think if you see here, I think it gives a clear picture. What is the percentage? What is the share? Basically between the developing country and the developed nation. So 1/4 is for the developed nation, and 3/4 of that goes to the, I think, developing countries. So many countries are there, we all know. And migration has been taking place, and it has, as already we have discussed, that migration has become the reality. So how we are going to manage the migration, especially in our own country, because India is a leading country, already it has been established. And we are also being benefited enormously on account of the inflow of the remittances. So we will see to it. And just have a look on these, I think, four countries: United Kingdom, United States of America, Canada, and Australia and New Zealand. I think data has been given in details. So this is very important. So what kind of policy India is having, especially with these countries? So we know pretty well that we have had a very good relations, bilateral relations, trade relations, so all kinds of relations are there. So this is very important because we are going to tap or take the benefit of the migration. And already it has been said, and it has been told, or it has been discussed, that migration or the migrants are going to contribute at two places. Means India, or on the other hand, the host countries, where there is a need of manpower, where there is need of human capital. I think that is very important to bring to your kind notice that how the whole society or the whole world is going to be benefited on account of this phenomena, means the venture of migration. So this is very, very important. Again, I think when we discuss the migration, which are the function of the outflow of the labor or outflow of the human capital, in return we say that the inflow of the remittances. So here, the inflow of remittances from the United States of America, United Kingdom, and the Canada to India. What is the scenario? I think again this is very important to discuss and to know what is the scenario. So in case of United Kingdom, 5% has been given, and then in case of United States of America, more than 17%, and of course in Canada, 4%. Australia 4.3%. In case of New Zealand, I think 1%. So if we see the total contribution is being made on account of all these developed countries. So far as the case of inflow of the remittances to India is concerned, I think 32%. So almost one third of the, I think, remittances are coming from this region, means the developed countries or the highly industrialized countries. So that is very, very important. But when we talk of the inflow of the remittances, which are basically coming from the developing countries, the rest of the world to India, that is 68%. So it's very interesting to understand. So I think again this data is based on the World Bank 2021. Why we all are discussing? Because it is the project, it is the strategy of South Asian countries, especially to India or many more countries, as how we are going to use and how this inflow of the remittances, the amount of remittances are being used for eradication of poverty, unemployment, and inequality as well, because this money or the remittances are found very, very useful so far as the case of developmental project is concerned in the country where migration is taking place, and these remittances are flowing or coming to this region. So all these South Asian countries are very important. But when we talk of India, I think India is the leading country. Since 2008, we have the data that India has acquired the first position in terms of the receipt of the remittances. If we rely the data as of now, if we have seen that I think it has crossed 100 billion US dollars today. Yeah, means 125 billion US dollars. India has received in the form of the remittances in 2023. So this is very interesting to discuss and to share with all of you. Why this area is important, migration or the remittances, as a student of economist or the sociologist or the even political scientist, how we can understand the importance and the significance of this phenomena so that we will be able to work in this area. So again, the inflow of the remittances in India with the pie chart, I think I have tried to 32% already we have discussed, and 68%, almost beyond more than three-fourth of the one in case of the hardly one third, and in case of three-fourth is coming from that region. So here, why it is this kind of thing is very important to discuss with this. And here again, I think if we see that this migration, which basically started following the India's independence or in the second post colonial time, I think when India established many institutions of higher learning like IIT, IIMs, so Indian students started being educated in that institute, and yeah, lot of educated or the highly educated personnel or the persons were passed out from that. And we all know that at the same time, I think, on account of the Second World War, there was a lot of human devastation or catastrophe had taken place in these European society. So there was a crisis of human resource at that time, and European societies basically wanted to reconstruct its own economy. And here was a huge number of human capital, highly skilled persons. So they basically formulated or created the immigration policy so that these South Indians started going to that region. And they also provided what we call it citizenship to a larger extent. And this all happened in the 60s or the late 50s, and Indians started going to that region. So there was a crisis also felt in India at that time, because they were educated at the very, I think, economical rate, or basically at the very, and they opted to go to the European countries rather than to serve India. So many social scientists started writing, and they have realized, and they have said that the brain drain was taking place. So there's a flow of the skilled migration which took place at that time. So that, on account of that, I think many scholars have written how brain drain basically took place at that time. So there is also, because a skilled manpower from India to developed Western countries based on the liberal immigration policies of developed Western countries in the perspective of the skilled or the professional migration. So this kind of situation. So if you see this scenario, I think it becomes very important to discuss now on account of globalization. What is the scenario? That is again very important to discuss. The recent phenomena of migration in the context of past to present with future implication of migration are understood under the approach of sustainable development goals of migration in this 21st century. So what basically I am interested to share with you that globalization, it all started since early 90s, especially in case of India. And lot change has taken place. Even the migration has been affected basically. Uh, Globalization has worked as the catalyst so far as the case of migration is concerned. And we have seen, and if you see the data or the outflow of the migration, I think it has speeded up on account of that. And it is clearly, these are the two variables which basically we need to discuss when we discuss the brain drain or the brain gain. So now we have stopped talking brain drain, rather we are talking of the brain gain. So how it is possible that wherever the Indians are, if they are interested to serve the motherland or the home country, this has been very much possible, and they are remitting a lot of remittances to India. So in a way, they are contributing immensely. And we all know pretty well that at the turn of the century in 2000, one minister, I think high level committee was constituted under the leadership of Dr. L.M. Singhvi at that time, when the first NDA regime was there under the able leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was the prime minister at that time. So he constituted high level committee on Indian diaspora. And this committee basically visited almost every part of the world, all important countries, and 25, yeah, 20, and they estimated, or they were estimated in terms of the diaspora or the presence of diaspora. So 110 countries had been identified, were there significant Indian workers were there, or the Indian communities were there. And of course, the total size of the Indian diaspora, which was or which is the result of what we call it migration, I think it was estimated to be around 25 million. That has now risen to 33 million. So the size of the Indian migration or the Indian diaspora or diasporic communities are increasing. So after the high level committee report, I think many recommendations were made as how to engage this Indian diaspora or this community for the mutual benefit and for the development of the nation.